Hello and welcome. This is Michelle Houghton. If you are tuning in on the Rubbernecker YouTube channel, I am a Copic craft educator or Copic educator, and I used to work for Copic and now I work on my own. Um, but I am doing some tutorials for Rubbernecker, and I also have a YouTube channel at Copic in the craft room. So we are coloring up this little tractor today from Rubbernecker Stamps, and I'm going to use a long series of colors on the body of the tractor to make it look kind of like a used tractor. So I've started with a W1 and done a base coat, and I'm using W3 to come in and add some shape to the body of that tractor. These colors are going to get completely covered up. It truly is to dull it down even further. I've used warm grays purposefully because I want it to look dull and worn and warm. So as you see those layers coming on, you're going to see how that kind of desaturates those colors from the get-go. So E93 is going to coat the entire thing. Notice I did not do any blending with the W's. Just laid some of those darker colors down. The E93 is one of these that's going to help give that metal a little bit of a rusted, worn look. You'll see another E9 come into play here in a little bit in some of those really dark areas and some of the kind of muddy, dirty areas later on. So that coats the entire thing. So all of this is the stuff that's going to be green. So here come those greens. So I'm starting with a YG03, and again, I'm coating the entire thing. And you're like, okay, this seems a little silly. But this is the series or the build up of colors to create kind of that worn, rusted look. So hopefully on the body of the tractor, you're seeing a little bit of where some of those darker W's are underlying. With my YG67, which is the color I'm using now, I'm coming back in and hitting some of those darker areas. So I'm going to reinforce that with the darker green. Again, it's truly just a building process of building those up. The YG67 is going to come all the way under that fender to get that whole area darker as well, because we know that's going to be in the deeper shadows. So that is definitely going to be darker. G20 is next, and that's going to hit, or sorry, YG03. I'm jumping ahead of myself here, sorry. YG03 is going to blend that YG67 edge. So I'm really just going over the edge of that, hitting that pretty hard. It's a big jump between those two colors, but because there's so much ink on the paper and I'm working fairly quickly, it blends fairly well. Coming back in to hit a couple rusty areas. The E99 is what I'm using for that. This is not only going to look like rust, but dirt. So the underneath of the fender is going to get that. And where I think about rust happening is on the edges of things where that water catches, and so it rusts out those areas. So I tend to hit corners, edges, trims. Right now I'm just worrying about the green areas, so I've hit that with the E99. Now here comes the G20, and that does a couple things. I'm kind of dabbing this color right in along those edges of the E99. It's going to do a couple things. It's actually going to bleach the color out a little bit, and so what this ends up looking like is that not so much, it's not a patina effect because it's not copper, but that worn, beat up effect. And so I do that on the edges of some of that E99 to kind of create this like bleaching back and forth between the greens and those new E99s, which are really a rusty brown color. So then I'm going to start working on the wheel. This is much more straightforward on the rest of the tractor. The green is kind of the fun part of this. The big tires, I'm going to use a series of C5, C7, and C9. So you're going to see me work in with all three of those. C5's that base color. I'm going to come back in with the other two, thinking about the shape. Where is that light going to come from up above? Kind of catch so that it looks like these rounded tires. Remember that one that's sitting to the back away from us is going to get considerably darker because we've got to push it back away from the viewer. But I'm going to go ahead and do all 4 tires at once. If you chose, you could do one at a time. This particular artist has very sketchy lines, so you have to kind of pick and choose. Do I go out to this one? Do I stay in on the other? They're not perfect circles, which actually is really nice, makes it easy to color, but it gives you you have to make some choices about how far do you go, what's going to be tire and what's going to be background, and just part of the doodly sketch effect. So I'm going to keep going. I'm also going to do the seat back in the same colors, but you're going to see me work through the C7 and C9 and then a little bit of blending with C5 again. All right, so then there are some lighter metal pieces to the tractor, I think. I'm using C1 and C3 on those. That's going to be kind of the hub caps or the inner portion of the wheel rims, some of the steering, the fender, the grate on the front of the tractor, but all of those are going to be with C1 and C3. I'm going to start with those just to get that shape in there. Then I really want to get those kind of rusty and dirty as well. So I've got that E93, and this I'm going to pick and choose where this is going to go because I still want the silver of the actual metal showing through. And notice I changed to the C's versus the W's on the tires and all the silver metal portion. Just a different kind of metal. And then, so I'm picking and choosing the places where I think those rough spots are happening or the dirt is catching and getting thrown into. So obviously on the interior of the wheels, we've got both rust, could be dirt, but we're getting that effect kind of built in on this tractor. The G20 is going to come back in, and this time because it's on that silver portion, it's going to work over pretty much that whole E9399 area. So and it'll work a little bit into those cool grays as well. Again, it has this kind of bleaching effect, but also softens those colors together, kind of mushes them around, and is going to give us a really nice worn metal look. Just for fun and a little bit of contrast on the image, I'm coming in with 2 reds on those little handles on part of the machinery to the side, R14, excuse me, and R46 is going to be next. I've also put a touch bit on the steering wheel. That part will be hard to see, and kind of either a step up or a piece on the side of the tractor. Again, you could use any color combo for that, and I am not a tractor aficionado. I did not look up photos this time. I just, in my head, I think green because I'm thinking John Deere. Obviously, there's no labeling on this. So it was just more of a recognizable color for a tractor, but I don't know what all these little parts would be colored. So you can look that up if you want, or just pick a fun color combination, something that matches your papers even. I'm going to go back to my cool grays to push back this panel. To me, it looks like those handles are kind of popping out of an indented place or a kind of pocket in the side of the tractor. Whether that's true or not, So I'm pushing that area back so those handles look like they pop out a little bit with the C5, 7, and 9. Onto the background, I'm keeping it really simple. I've got 2 earth tones for the ground, and I'm trying to make it look, I'm going to try to make it look like kind of rows in a field that has been plowed or seeded. So I've got an E3-1, and I am basing the ground in that. I'm leaving the edges rough. I have no idea what I would do to trim this down and create a card out of it. So I'm leaving the edges loose. I could either trim it so you could still see those edges, or I could trim it down tight enough so that you see much less of that kind of scribbly white edge. Sometimes I like to see some of that. Sometimes I trim it all off. And this time, just as much as anything for interest, I'm putting in a little bit of an angle, like this tractor's kind of coming across the field at an angle. So I just didn't want it to be like the straight across horizon line where sky meets land. I just wanted to add some interest there. So I'm creating a diagonal line that works its way across, kind of with that horizon line, but you'll see that same line in the rows I create with this darker color of E3-5. And when I switch to that, which I'm going to do here pretty soon, notice the E3-1 is not smooth. The E3-5 is going to come in these kind of scribbly, kind of up and down, jagged rows. And I truly am creating rows. And that is very purposeful. I want it to look like a plowed field that has these rows kind of either building. I mean, if you wanted to, you could even go back in and add dots of green across the top, something really dark to show that initial plant growth kind of coming in. And that could be really fun. But I left it as kind of a field that's just been turned, or the rows have been created, and it's ready for planting. I'm going to use the E3-5 underneath the tractor as well to create kind of a cast shadow, so it is going to get darker under there. I kind of create the rows first and then come back and work on that. And then to push that cast shadow back even further, I've got a BV23. I could have gone even darker in hindsight. I could have gone with a BV25 or a different blue violet, or even a cool gray. But I wanted to cool that area down below the tractor, really set that down on the earth a little bit more solid. I felt like the E3-5 was still making that tractor pop forward, up and off. So I felt like this helped ground it a little bit. Sky is going to be super, super easy. And notice I did not blend any of that ground. I just left it. Personal choice. You can always go back and do kind of a couple washes of that E3-1 to soften that. Again, sorry. I am healthy. If you're wondering, it's allergies. BG000 Sky, I'm going to go over this with a nice wash. So I'm working from one side across the other, kind of smokestack across, and I'll go smokestack to the other route. I'm keeping it really wet and just keeping it moving. I use small circles with that chisel nib. Personal preference, I keep it moving. I need at least 2 to 3 hits on each area. And so for me, that's the easiest way to get that. If you can do that with a back and forth stroke, more power to you. You could use your brush nib and hit a large area way on the side of that brush nib. But for me, this was not about getting super smooth. I just wanted it all kind of wet at the same time. So I worked pretty fast all the way across. And that is my little tractor. It's ready to pop on a card. If find some fun sentiment over at Rubbernecker. They've got a ton of them. Sorry, there's an image that's stamped on the back that's kind of popping through a little bit, but as the ink dries, that will disappear. Thank you so much for joining me today. Have a happy, colorful day.